Jared and Patty can have one if they want. If they want.
Okay. Howdy. My name is Patrick Von Dolan with SAFA Action. Okay, let's try that. Again, howdy. My name is Patrick Von Dolan with SAFA Action. And we're here today to save San Pedro Avenue and all the other major thoroughfares of the city of San Antonio. And we want to begin, as we do all our press conferences, with a prayer. Blessed are they who observe justice, who do righteousness at all times, Psalm 106:3. And we ask the one triune God to bless us in the name of the Father, and the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. We stand before you, Holy Spirit, conscious of our sinfulness, but aware that we gather in your name. Come to us, remain with us, and enlighten our hearts. Give us light and strength to know your will, to make it our own, and to live it in our lives. Guide us by your wisdom. Support us by your power, for you are God, sharing the glory of Father and Son. You desire justice for all. Enable us to uphold the rights of others. Do not allow us to be misled by ignorance or corrupted by fear or favor. Unite us to yourself in the bond of love, and keep us faithful to all that is true. As we gather in your name, may we temper justice with love, so that all our decisions may be pleasing to you and earn the reward promised to good and faithful servants. We ask this of you who live and reign with the Father and the Son, one God, forever and ever. Amen. St. Anthony, pray for us. So we're glad you're here today. Today is a monumental day for the citizens of San Antonio, for the taxpayers of San Antonio, for the property owners, small business owners, and residents along San Pedro Avenue. November 3rd, 2020, the city had put a vote on the ballot to approve a new tax measure, actually a transition in taxes for the Advanced Transportation District, ATD, Advanced Transportation District Part 2. It begins on January 1, 2026. The tax starts being collected, that particular tax starts being collected. And part of that tax that the city of San Antonio passed to put on the ballot did not contain the detail it needed to avoid a contestation like this. We are seeing an ideology here, an ideology of Agenda 21 that has culminated into VIA's Advanced Rapid Transit Green Line, the first line. Agenda 21 then spun off in the city of San Antonio in 2017 to the Paris Climate Accord. In 2018, the Climate Action Adaptation Plan. And now, another measure to force people out of their own individual vehicles in an attempt to save the environment. They're going to cause more destruction and disruption to life along San Pedro Avenue to start off with the Green Line. No longer can citizens sit back and not act. And we are here representing thousands of people who have supported us in this measure. We worked to defeat the measure in November 3rd, 2020, which passed by overwhelming majority, and was seen as a referendum on former Mayor Ron Nirenberg on his popularity. Ron Nirenberg's agenda was twofold, and the second one was multimodal transportation, an idea that would force people out of their cars and onto public transportation to save the environment. The Climate Action Adaptation Plan even went so far as to say that internal combustion engines won't be able to drive in downtown San Antonio after the year 2040. This is an overall agenda, but the practical matter today is that it impacts adversely small businesses along San Pedro Avenue. And there's only small businesses along San Pedro Avenue. It adversely affects people who live along San Pedro Avenue and who travel there. On KeepSAMoving.com, VIA's own website, they admit that they know over 16% of the drivers along San Pedro will be forced off San Pedro because of the congestion. What we're talking about is the takeover and fundamental transformation of San Pedro Avenue from the airport down Isom Road and 11.2 miles down San Pedro. $32 million per mile just to get started. That does not include operational annual expenses. There will be no more left turns. It will dramatically impact first responders, their ability to respond timely. No more left turns, completely inconvenient for anybody doing business on San Pedro Avenue or lives along San Pedro Avenue or travels like I do every day, every weekday. After many years now of working administratively, legislatively, we are now at this point where we had to act, and our last remedy, unfortunately, is to file a lawsuit in district court. So with that, I'd like to welcome in our attorney who flew in this morning, Mr. Jared Navar, to address the legal concerns in the case. Please welcome Jared.
Thank you, Patrick. And as Patrick just said, in November of 2020, in an election ordered by the Board of VIA, San Antonio an increase. So, and that tax is slated to start collection as of January 1 of 2026. The 3 years after that election, the city of San Antonio in 2023 and 2024 considered and adopted a plan, an agreement with VIA that's now been signed, where the city of San Antonio is going to send their statutorily required percentage of the increased sales tax back to VIA to be spent in VIA's discretion. This presents at least 3 problems in Texas law that mean that agreement is illegal. Which the city itself has said is a critical component of funding for the project. So the first problem is that, as I said, the voters approved an increase of 1/8 to 1% of the sales tax. The transportation code very carefully delineates the allocation of those proceeds, and it says that 25% of that increase, it has to go to every participating unit in a transportation district like this. So in other words, of the increased sales taxes collected in San Antonio beginning in 2026, the city has to receive, under Texas law, 25% of those. And the idea, the whole purpose of that, the point of it is that at least the city council will retain the authority and the discretion to spend a portion of the increased proceeds, and therefore you have political accountability for at least how a portion of those proceeds are spent, which can be used to fix potholes or do any other kind of road maintenance or transportation improvements anywhere in the city, in the discretion of the city council, which are elected by San Antonio voters, obviously. By this after-the-fact agreement, after the 2020 vote, the city council now, though, has punted its authority to decide how that money is spent, which amounts to over $13 million at present sales tax collection rates, which will only increase in the future. But based on recent collection rates, we're talking about $13.5 million a year. So it violates the Texas Transportation Code for the city to, there's no authority in Texas law for the city to punt this money back to VIA. And the legislature, it's important to note, in the Transportation Code, the legislature specifically considered the possibility of transfers between and among entities, and they only approve transfers in one way, in one direction. There's a provision in 451.702 that allows VIA to transfer money from the sales tax revenue to participating units like San Antonio, but there's no authority for San Antonio to send any money back to VIA. The legislature gave 25% of that money to the city to spend in its discretion. So this interlocal agreement with VIA violates the transportation code. It also violates and abdicates the city council's responsibility to exercise its discretion to spend the city's money as directed essentially by the voters' representatives, which are the members of the city council. So in other words, the Texas Constitution says that in any municipality or county, the governing body is the body that is supposed to determine how the money of that entity is spent. And there's a basic legal principle in Texas law that you can't delegate those responsibilities to another entity. So the city can't delegate the authority to spend tax dollars to another governmental body. But that's exactly what the city council has done here by punting this millions of dollars a year back to VIA, which is run by an unelected board, and which will now have the authority to spend this millions of dollars a year rather than San Antonio voters' own representatives and city council. Again, it's important because we're talking about a substantial sum of money that if the transportation code and the principles of local discretion are followed here and observed as they should be, the city council would have that money every year to spend on regular road maintenance, on fixing potholes, wherever and whenever they want, as directed by their voters, their constituents. Instead, they're preempting all that authority and giving the money back to VIA for this unelected body, unelected board of directors to spend entirely in their discretion. And this agreement with VIA operates in perpetuity. In other words, it's a one-time agreement. It's not for 1 year or 2 years. It's by its own terms. San Antonio has agreed to kick all this money back every year in perpetuity as long as this tax is collected. So we're talking about a substantial sum of money when you start adding it up over a number of years, especially. So as Patrick said, we filed this case as a taxpayer lawsuit, essentially, challenging this illegal expenditure of funds by the city in Bexar County District Court. And we look forward to a first court hearing as soon as we can get one, and we'll keep you updated on all the happenings in the court. And if anybody has any questions, I can take them, or we'll take questions after.
Okay, next I'd like to have Patty Gibbons speak. Patty is the former president of the Greater Harmony Hills Neighborhood Association, and please welcome Patty.
Thank you. I want to say thank you to the San Antonio Family Association for picking up this torch. This has been a very, very long trek of us activists at the time that have worked with VIA, worked with City Development Services Department on what exactly are they doing to San Pedro, and what exactly are they doing to gentrifying our neighborhoods, which are almost over 13 neighborhoods going down San Pedro. That'll feel a very big chunk of their neighborhood gone. This is not just about the law that was brought to him, but it's about the moral ethics of it. That now the city, with their strong arm, using the Development Services Department, using zoning as their backdoor in, will change the roadway, certainly change the way we travel on San Pedro, but will also change the landscape, because they'll acquire land all the way down that 10 mile of San Pedro in order to begin possibly building affordable housing type tenements. This was their goal all along. And this is what we talked to the development services to get clarity about it and push against it. Because to have that type of a development in the back or the front of your neighborhood, which these are legacy neighborhoods, been there for many, many years, and still sustained today by other associations for their worth, for their asset value. And now we're going to find some destruction will start to begin to happen. We already know owners of businesses along San Pedro have already been given notice by VIA, sell to us, or we eminent domain. Eminent domain was a question we brought up as activists at development services meetings all the time, and all the time they were denying it. It's clearly on the VIA website. You can read it for yourself. So I appreciate everything Patrick has done, SAFA has done, to get this back to the forefront, that this is a boondoggle type project. It will harm neighborhoods, it will harm homeowners, it will harm our ability to freely and with liberty use your car to go down San Pedro for the commerce that you'd use it for. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. Next, I'd like to welcome up Mike Knufke, board member of SAFA Action.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you for being here today. I just have a couple of things that I want to mention that are very relevant to this project. A lot of people don't recognize or realize that we have before us a big shiny object called Project Marvel. And everyone's focused on Project Marvel. The net burden of taxpayer with Project Marvel, only because the hotels and things of that nature are going to be owned by investors, okay? But the net on the taxpayer is approximately $2.5 billion. $2.5 billion. And this shiny object is flying through the sky and everybody's up in arms about it and making a big deal about it. Well, it's pretty amazing to me that while that thing is flying around, we have right here in front of us the VIA project that is estimated to be $2.7 billion. So why don't we know about it? It's pretty simple. Phase 1 is the green line. Phase 2 is the silver line. Phase 3, who knows? There's a total of 7 lines. So if you take the green line, which according to them is going to be the longest line, and the silver line, which is a block from here and it goes east-west, is going to be the shortest line. So all we did is we extrapolated the numbers, divided it by 2, got an average, and multiplied it times 7. That's all we did. Nothing fancy. And that number is the $2.7 billion. And so Patrick mentioned, or somebody mentioned the gentrification. I think Patty mentioned it, gentrification. We got a call years ago from a priest that said, what are we going to do about the gentrification of all these areas? I said, well, Father, the only thing we can do is if something's coming up, we've got to defend the family. And so that's where the San Antonio Family Association comes in with our sister organization, is that we have to defend the family. And so that's why SAFA Action is taking this step. The last point I'd like to make is that if you take a look at their financials, and by the way, I can't find the official financials for 23 and 24, but I did have them at one point, but I cannot find them. But I had to go back last night to 2022. And in the financials, a lot of people don't know. This is what San Antonio citizens need to know. What is paid for running VIA from the ridership? What amount of money is being paid for by the ridership of VIA? 5 cents of every dollar. That's it. 5 cents of every dollar. Every dollar that comes into VIA, only 5 cents is from ridership. Let me repeat that. 5 cents comes in from ridership. That means 95% is coming from where? Right here. Our taxes. 95%. So here's the question. If we have a situation, this is 2022, where only 5 cents is coming from the ridership, why in the world would we take that enterprise, VIA, and blow it up and expand it 4 times, 5 times, 6 times with this this VIA monster thing that's taking place? Why would we do that? Well, it's pretty clear. It's a boondoggle, and it's a payback, and somebody's going to make a lot of money, not the citizens of San Antonio. And I said this earlier, I'm not for Marvel necessarily, but I will tell you this, at least Marvel has an economic stimulus potential to businesses and what have you around downtown. At least it has that. VIA, there is no economic stimulus. It is a drain and throwing money down the drain. And that's what we need to be aware of. San Antonio needs to wake up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike Knufke. Next, I'd like to welcome up Danny Petrie, SAFA Action board member as well.
Thank you, Patrick. I live on San Pedro. I've lived all my life off of San Pedro. And when I went to meet with VIA, and I asked the question, if 90% of the people that live around San Pedro don't want this, would you stop it? And the answer was no. And I thought, wow, that's really a good representation of all the people in San Antonio. And when I talked to city council, okay, and I explained to them the issues here, and their response to me was, well, we support public transportation. I said, well, I support public transportation. I took the bus, you know, living up and down San Pedro. I support public transportation. What's wrong with the public transportation right now? Well, it's not reliable. I said, it's not. It is reliable. It's reliable. The buses show up all the time. Well, I support public transportation. And so what I really think that when she said it a couple of times, what that means is that we just support wasteful government spending, because we do have public transportation. It is reliable, and it's similar to the $40 million parking garage out on 281. It's just wasteful spending, and the empty parking garage at that, yes. And so the city government has isolated itself from the citizens in several ways. One, we can't, we don't vote for them but every 4 years now. Two, we can't hold a referendum in the city of San Antonio like has been in the past, because they changed the rules, and San Antonio is probably the worst city in trying to get a referendum in the state of Texas, because the way they changed the rules. We can't have a charter amendment but every 2 years. And so we're going to have a petition, and that petition is basically so that we can put it on the ballot, so that we can vote, so that we can vote. Doesn't that sound crazy? We're going to put it on, do a petition so we can vote, because they don't listen to us, and they don't hear our voice. So this would cause an awful lot of trouble with residents, with the traffic. It's going to ruin all the businesses up and down San Pedro. It's going to overload McCullough and Blanco Road, which already have been narrowed. Again, hopefully this will get their attention, and our petition will get their attention, and the city of San Antonio will start listening, because it's not really about public transportation, it's about their projects. And we do have public transportation, we do support public transportation, but we don't support this. Thank you.
Well, living there your whole life, Danny, along San Pedro, that's a long time. We know that this is a major boondoggle project by the fact that almost 17 highly paid employees of the city of San Antonio have now transferred over to VIA to work for them. They know the money's about to start pouring in. As Jared Navar mentioned, 25% of the 1/8 cent sales tax amounts to currently over $13,500,000, and that number will go up. In 2012, 1/8 cent sales tax amounted to, in the city of San Antonio, about $32 million. Now, 1/8 cent sales tax amounts to about $54 million annually, and that number will continue to grow, not only due to inflation, but to also additional population and in San Antonio. Again, with another project of infill for the city of San Antonio, as that's the only way the city of San Antonio can grow. So where were we left at? We're left at a situation where we have taxation without representation. We had a nation that began on taxation without representation. After the 13 colonies had its fill, and the inhabitants of the new America had its fill of taxation without representation, of violations of liberty and life and justice, they had to respond. And they did. And thanks be to God, now we have a great nation in our 249th year celebrating independence. That's why we're here today. We have exhausted all other means, legislatively, administratively, at the poll site back in 2020. And now we're forced to respond to the City Council and their bad measure here to allow VIA to spend over $13,500,000 currently, annually, and give it to VIA without discretion so they can spend whatever they want to spend it on. So what could the city spend it on? You see the sign in front of me. The city was not required by the vote to give it to VIA. The city could be using that money for the many, many potholes in the streets of San Antonio, to repave the streets of San Antonio. I don't know if you've driven around San Antonio. District 9 has its own problems, but District 2 and District 10, particularly if you drive over there, I was over there not too long ago, you need a new front-end suspension every year, and that becomes an indirect tax. That's what the city of San Antonio can be spending this money on. That's what they should be spending this money on, and not allowing an unelected board to make the decisions for $13.5 million and growing annually. So with that, we'll take any questions that you might have. Yes, Richard.
So, I mean, the city passes on taxpayer funds to lots of different nonprofits, right? Like Centro, which takes care of downtown. How is this different?
I'm gonna answer the question real quick and, from a general standpoint, and then let Jerry answer the technicalities of it. So, good question, Richard. Richard asked, San Antonio Express News asked, how is this any different from the city of San Antonio awarding any money to any other non-governmental organization or other organization? Let's use the Esperanza Peace and Justice Center for instance, in about $348,000 a year that they get, and now they just used it to promote prostitution this year. They actually had an event doing that. It's terrible and tragic, and we are working with City Council to defund some of those organizations that are receiving money, that are doing bad things with the money. However, in most cases, the City of San Antonio does take RFPs, requests for proposals, where they are outlining exactly how they're going to spend the money. And and they get approved for the most part because of that, the submission of their request for proposal, which has some detail to it. Unlike Esperanza Peace and Justice Center, the City Council just scared of them because they filed a lawsuit against them when they pulled funding from them in the past. And yet, in this case, when the election happened, VIA was long on ideas and short on details. There were no details when the measure was passed November 3rd, 2020. And that's the short of it, Richard. I'll let Jared answer the technicals on that.
Yeah, well, Richard, I think Patrick hit the nail on the head with the legal answer as well, with what he started to talk about, because, you're right. Cities and all levels of government will issue grants to different organizations, but those are always in response to a specific request for proposal or a grant application where the uses of the funds are delineated, and they're given for those specific purposes with those limitations generally. And it's also a limited amount of time, a grant. It's annually or biannually or, some limited temporal period. Here, the city has literally signed over its 25% of the growing annual sales tax revenues from this ATD2 in perpetuity. So they're not exercising their discretion. They're essentially punting their authority to exercise their discretion to VIA in perpetuity. That's the legal problem.
They have already gotten a lot of federal money, and of course, when it comes to Green Line, they've either broken ground or close to it. So, are we too late to do anything about it?
Never too late.
No, the city itself has said that this portion of funding, which you can call ATD2, that's how it's referred to in the city's own documents, is critical to the viability of the entire project. They barely have started construction. All they're doing so far is moving public utilities, underground and overhead apparently. No actual construction on the Green Line has started. So, whether or not San Antonio could undo whatever portion of federal grants have come in already. It doesn't mean that the city cannot retain discretion in how it spends its 25%, and if that's what the law requires. So it may affect those grants. It may affect if those grants go forward year after year, because if it does mean the whole project is not viable, then perhaps it undoes the premises on which those grants were agreed to.
Thank you, Jay, for your question. On another note, and it's a good observation, right at the tail end of the Biden administration, right before Trump was inaugurated in January of this year, the money arrived here in San Antonio, about $224 million, as you mentioned. And quite frankly, we have been working to have that money recalled. And from top to bottom, we've worked this. That's why I said we worked administratively, legislatively, everything before we got to this point of actually filing a lawsuit. And we are continuing to work with not only Congress, but also with the Trump administration to have this money recalled, just as it's been recalled. Federal money's been recalled in California for the rail line to nowhere, and it's not going anywhere in a couple of places in the United States of America where the money has been recalled. And candidly, they're looking. It comes down to a matter of fraud, and we believe that this lawsuit will help us to expose the fraud that will then have the money from the federal government recalled.
Is there anything in this action that would restrain them from going forward?
Well, we'll be addressing that with the court. Whether and to what extent we need an actual injunction, just as a function of the schedule and how the litigation moves forward. They're not even collecting this tax yet. That starts in a few months. The first payment to VIA, I think, is scheduled for a few months after the collection starts. So we're going to work with the court to get whatever order we need in time that we need it. But I don't know if that means we need a particular injunction or not. The court could perhaps litigate the entire thing all the way up to the Supreme Court before it ever becomes necessary to get a TRO or any other kind of injunction. But if we need it, we're going to seek it.
And lastly, the city council actually could do something. They could actually allow people to vote on this and put it to vote for the city. I don't know why they don't. They've ignored that, and the city could really resolve a lot of issues if they did that. And they just haven't done it, and you should ask the city council why they don't do that.
The third part of that answer would be the city council can act on it. They can correct the interlocal agreement and abide by the interlocal agreement that they're violating right now. And I think one of the things that we haven't mentioned is not only is the city violating the interlocal agreement, they're violating the Texas Constitution, and they're violating the city's own charter. Now, we've seen this before, and we've taken a task before over it. And so, based on that alone, we hope that it will recall the $13.5 million. It's local money that needs to be spent on roads, fixing potholes, repairing streets, repaving streets. And so if we are able to do that and get that money redirected for the cause that people really voted for, which was for roadways improvement, that money, if it cannot be used for the VIA, then it could kill the whole deal. Certainly any future line, but it could kill the whole deal. I know the city put out there, and VIA put out there that maybe 2 months ago now, that they officially broke ground on Isom Road. But I can tell you, Danny not only lives along San Pedro Avenue, offices right at the would be the headwaters of the Green Line, and there's been no construction there. They might have gone out there and turned some dirt with a shovel, but there's been no actual activity other than sending letters, as Patty referenced, other than sending demand letters on eminent domain. They might call it temporary eminent domain right now, but it will dramatically impact the business owners along there who are already short on parking for their customers already, and they're going to lose it and really impact their small businesses. So the backbone of San Antonio is not unlike the backbone of San Antonio. That's small business in the economy. And we're talking about impacting thousands of businesses adversely here, not to mention all the families that live along that way. Yes, ma'am. Thank you for the question. I'm going to address it in this way, is that ridership for VIA is abysmal already. And while one of our board members, Danny Petrie, mentioned that we are for public transportation, we know, and there's a bus right here, we know that buses are a community good, particularly for people who cannot afford it, or even those who choose not to own a vehicle, and that people have a right to move about. And people also have a right to move about in their own vehicles, and we're given a license for that, but we still have a right to move about. And because the numbers for VIA ridership are already so low, that's why, as Mike Knuffy referenced, less than 5% of VIA bus operations annually are paid by ridership. That alone tells you that there's not many riders on that. Just look at the numbers. We can argue about whether or not they're at capacity in ridership. VIA has told us in previous meetings and hosted by the San Antonio Family Association, as well as Betty Eckert, Miss Betty Eckert, who's not able to be here today, also one of the plaintiffs in this lawsuit. She would tell you that, and they told us at one of the meetings, I think we even had it at the VIA Green Line, the ART office, just across from what used to be the Migrant Resource Center, that they said that their max capacity is about 40% of bus ridership, and they want to expand it. Well, they're not even there, but yet they want to expand it here. And in the Primo lines, they spent over $1 million per bus station on the Primo lines. And so it's incredible government waste. There will be 28 stops along the 11.2 miles of San Pedro Avenue, 28 stops, and in those stops, within 500 feet, some negotiable between 250 and 500 feet, they will be able to overlay on the zoning of that area, which is very concerning, which Patty Gibbons referred to. This overlay on each of these 28 bus stops, giving them this 250 to 500 feet, they can actually come in where we've already seen VIA expand its size and scope of mission from providing public transportation to get into property ownership, property development, and most likely affordable housing, where gentrification will take place. And so in that case, ridership is not there already. We see it not only when we watch the buses go by, we see it in the numbers. Only 5%, less than 5% actually, of bus operations annually come from ridership. And yet VIA wants to expand its size and scope because they say if they have 10-minute intervals on San Pedro Avenue during the weekdays, and on the evenings and weekends they have 15-minute intervals, people will be able to count on it more, be more reliable, and hopefully use that huge $40 million park and ride up in Stone Oak to get on to park there and ride the buses. We all know it's not going to happen. We all know it's not going to happen when somebody gets to the airport, just like Jared did this morning coming in from Houston. They're not going to get on a bus when they know the criminal activity in San Antonio is at an extremely high rate, no matter what the city shows in numbers. We've seen numerous murders and shootings just this week alone, and where people are not going to want to get on public transportation. They're going to get on an Uber or a Lyft or a cab, and they're going to make their way downtown safely. And so we see that it's fictitious, and it's so fictitious it's negligent on the part of VIA to say that because they're going to increase consistency to 10 minutes intervals on weekdays, that people are going to start riding. It's just fake information that they've used to sell this whole boondoggle idea. Yes, ma'am. One more.
Where I live, the way San Antonio is structured, if I want to use the Stone Oak parking lot, I have to drive as far north to Stone Oak to catch a bus as my destination is down San Pedro, and I'm as tall as I go. If I don't want to do that and I walk to a bus station, I can't do it in heels, I can't do it in what I need to be dressed in when I go to my destination in San Pedro because of work. The way San Antonio is, most people are a long ways from a bus station.
So what's your question? Okay, just observation. Well, to that point, well, there is a need in San Antonio for public transportation. But if you look at the maps, and we've shown it in our presentation, which we can share with y'all, we don't have it here today. We do have a copy of the lawsuit for the filing if anybody wants a copy of it. But one of the documents we uncovered just this year, it states that the demand for ridership along San Pedro is the lowest in the city. their own numbers. There are parts of San Antonio, primarily on the west side and south side, that bus ridership is more in demand. But it's not along San Pedro Avenue where the first line for the advanced rapid transit is going in. The second part of a document we discovered from the city of San Antonio is that there's a secondary impact to this that we fought in 2015. We were one of the leading organizations that helped stop the light rail in 2015. And light rail on Broadway, 3 miles of track, $880 million total project on capital cost. In this case, we found a document that says BRT now and LRT later. That means LRT stands for light rail transit. So we know this is the makings of light rail, which the citizens have already defeated before, and yet the city just has its ideas and its programs and its purpose to continue to spend money to justify their existence of their job, but they continue to have projects like this that the citizens have already voted on, the citizens have already spoken out on, and do not want light rail. Any other questions? Okay, Jack, you want to say something? Put your sign down.
Gentlemen, my name is Jack Finger. I am a bus rider. I know what goes on. But more importantly, the point I wish to bring to you is that at one of the hearings that VIA had, it admitted that the current bus stops, routes number 3, routes number 4, are going to be eliminated. Yes, eliminated. What's going to be put in their place? The VIA Green Line bus stops, which are how far from each other? Many hundreds of feet. Bus riders catch a bus because it is not only economical, but, well, convenient. It's right near their house. It's right where they live. It's right where they work. That's why they catch a bus instead of using a vehicle. But if the bus stop that they are accustomed to using is no longer there, and the new one from the Green Line is going to be hundreds of feet further on, well, what if they have trouble walking, like an elderly person? What if it's raining? What if it's 32 degrees temperature? Who would want to go that far to catch a bus when they can use whatever vehicle they have? Say, heck, I'll use my own clunker to get around. I'll do it because I'm not going to, that's a choice I have. There are many hidden things in here you may want to investigate before we all clamor on the VIA bandwagon. Thank you.
And on that note, thank you, Jack. On that note, there are other co-plaintiff, Betty Eckert, who's a resident along San Pedro Avenue, who couldn't be here today. She would tell you it's ludicrous. At 94 years young, she is, be 95 on December 12th, Feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe. It's ludicrous for the VIA plan that is described on keepsamoving.com that people will have to walk from the sidewalk on the side of the street into the middle of the street to get on a bus platform, which was currently the center turning lane, to then board a bus. How ludicrous it is for the seniors, the 250,000 seniors in Bexar County, to be able to do that and to do it safely. Yeah, last opportunity for questions. Anybody? Okay, thank you very much. We're going to wrap up with a prayer as we close all of our press conference. Will you hand me that prayer there, Michael?
Yep.
Thank you all for your attendance today and your attention and coverage of this important press conference for the taxpayers and then the residents of San Antonio, for what's truly good not only for individuals but for the common good.